New Orleans, 1918. A killer slips through the night, wielding an axe and leaving blood-soaked rooms behind. He spares only those playing jazz, taunting the city with a chilling letter: play or perish. The axeman is loose, and no one is safe. December 17, 1917. Local grocer on Apple Street, Epifanio Andolino, and his two sons, John, 14, and Salvador, 13, are attacked at around 3 a.m. His wife, Anna, and infant daughter, sleeping right next to him, were not attacked. The man hit Epifanio in the head with an axe 4 times. The man then apparently threatened the wife with a pistol to silence her and ran into the next room with the boys. After he attacked both of them, he fled to the kitchen. All survived. The first to succumb to the sharp blade of the axeman was an Italian grocer named Joseph Maggio and his wife, Catherine, on May 23, 1918. As they lay sleeping in their apartment above the Maggio grocery store, the killer cut the couple's throats with a straight razor that belonged to Joseph's brother, Andrew, before bashing in their heads with an axe. When law enforcement began to investigate, they found the bloody clothes of the murderer, as he had obviously changed into a clean set of clothes before fleeing the scene. Police ruled out robbery as motivation for the attacks, as money and valuables left in plain sight were not stolen by the intruder. Near the couple's home, a message written in chalk read, "Mrs. Joseph Maggio will sit up tonight. Just write Mrs. Tony." Investigators immediately questioned several people, but all were released for lack of evidence. Andrew was home at the time of the incident and is the one that found them in their room. He ran down the street for help and was quickly implicated in the murders, but later released. A little more than a month later, another couple was attacked in the early morning hours of June 28, 1918. Louis Bessumer, a grocer, and his mistress, Harriet Anna Lowe, lived in quarters at the back of the store. They were discovered by John Zanka, a baker making morning deliveries, lying in a pool of blood. Bessumer had been struck with an axe above his right temple, and Lowe was hacked over the left ear. Though badly injured, both were still alive. Once again people were questioned, and one black man, who was a new employee with them, was arrested but was later released. Though the crime made the newspapers, of bigger note to some was the scandal of the mistress. Anna was actually married to Louis's brother. Anna had claimed while in the hospital to be Louis's wife, but he made it clear when he left the hospital, yelling, "That woman is not my wife." After the attack, one side of Anna's face was partially paralyzed, and on August 5, she had surgery performed in an effort to correct it. 2 days later she died, but before she passed she told authorities that she suspected it was Louis Bessumer who had attacked her, and that she was also sure he was a German spy. Authorities did find letters in his home in German and Yiddish. He was arrested but released 2 days later. He was arrested again later. Bessumer was then charged with murder and served 9 months in prison before being acquitted on May 1, 1919, after a 10-minute jury deliberation. On August 5, a third similar attack was made on a Mrs. Edward Schneider, who was 8 months pregnant. As the 28-year-old lay in bed, she awoke to see a dark figure standing over her, and was bashed in the face repeatedly. Shortly after midnight, she was discovered by her husband, who was just returning from work. Her scalp had been cut open, and her face was completely covered in blood, but she survived the attack to give birth to a healthy baby girl 2 days later. One man was arrested on suspicion but soon released for lack of evidence. By this time, investigators began to publicly speculate that the attack was related to the previous incidents involving Bessumer and Maggio. Just 5 days later, yet another grocer, a man named Joseph Romano, was attacked on August 10. The 80-year-old grocer lived with his 2 nieces, who awoke to the sound of a commotion in the adjoining room where their uncle resided. Pauline and Mary Bruno were being looked after by their uncle. The girls entered Romano's room to find that he had taken a serious blow to his head and saw the assailant was fleeing. The grocer, though seriously injured, was able to walk to the ambulance once it arrived, but he died 2 days later due to severe head trauma. The girls were able to provide a brief description of the killer: heavy-set man but extremely agile, who wore a dark suit and slouched hat. Other clues of the crime were similar to the previous ones, such as the scenes were often ransacked but nothing was ever stolen, that the killer used the owner's hatchets and blades, that panels of doors or windows were chiseled away to gain entry, and that the majority of the victims were Italian. Police were inundated with reports from citizens claiming to have seen an axeman lurking neighborhoods, axes, chisels found in backyards, and doors and windows that appeared to have been tampered with. People began to carry loaded shotguns, and family members took turns watching over their families at night. One report alleged that the axeman was masquerading as a woman, another that he had been seen leaping over a back fence. The people were afraid, determined to protect themselves, and bordered on panic. But perhaps the heat generated by that terror was somehow transferred to the axeman, as the killings and assaults stopped as quickly as they had started. Over the months, the fear waned and the neighborhoods returned to normal until March 10, 1919, when the axeman struck again. Charles Cortimiglia was an immigrant and grocer who lived with his wife, Rosie, and 2-year-old daughter, Mary, in the town of Gretna, just across the Mississippi River from New Orleans. When screams were heard coming from the Cortimiglia residence in the early morning hours, neighboring grocer, Lorlando Giordano, rushed across the street to investigate. There he found that the three had been attacked. Rosie had awakened to find her husband struggling with a large man wielding an axe. When her husband fell to the floor, the assailant turned on her as she held her daughter and begged for their lives. Undaunted, the killer slammed the axe down on both mother and daughter. When the neighbor arrived, Charles lay in a pool of blood on the floor as Rosie stood in the doorway with a serious head wound, clutching her deceased daughter. The couple was rushed to the hospital, where both were treated for skull fractures. Charles was released 2 days later, while his wife remained in the care of doctors. Upon gaining full consciousness, Rosie stated that the attack was made by neighboring grocer Lorlando Giordano and his 18-year-old son, Frank. Though Lorlando, a 69-year-old man, was in too poor of health to have committed the crimes, and Frank Giordano was too big to have fit through the panel in the back door. However, the pair were arrested. Though Charles Cortimiglia denied his wife's claims, the Giordanos were charged with the murders, and would later be found guilty. Frank was sentenced to hang, and his father to life in prison. After the trial, Charles divorced his wife. About a year later, Rosie Cortimiglia reversed her claim, stating that she had falsely accused the two out of jealousy and spite, with her claim being the only evidence against the Giordanos, and they were released from jail shortly thereafter. Following the Cortimiglia murders, New Orleans was again filled with terror and once again began to arm themselves. The police stated that they believed all of the crimes to have been committed by the same man, a bloodthirsty maniac, filled with a passion for human slaughter. Then a new twist came upon the scene when the Times-Picayune newspaper received an taunting letter on March 14, 1919, that promised another attack. Hell, March 13, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc., but tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it was better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 on next Tuesday night, March 19, 1919, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse. Hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee, I have been, am and will be the worst spirit that ever existed either in fact or realm of fancy. The Axeman. According to the killer's statement, anyone listening to jazz on March 19th would be spared. That night, jazz echoed through homes, dance halls overflowed, and bands played at parties citywide. No one was killed. The Axeman murders became part of New Orleans culture, even inspiring a music genre, Axeman's Jazz. The first hit, The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz, in 1919. Weeks later, on August 10th, grocer Steve Boca was attacked in his sleep. Though struck with an axe, he survived but remembered little of the assault. Like other victims, nothing was stolen, and his back door was chiseled open. On September 2nd, druggist William Carson narrowly escaped the Axeman, firing shots at an intruder who fled, leaving a broken door and an axe behind. The following day, September 3, 1919, a young woman, Sarah Lawman, was attacked while she slept. She survived despite severe injuries. A bloody axe was found outside, and her attacker entered through a window, differing from previous attacks. New Orleans was gripped by fear again. Then, on October 27, 1919, grocer Mike Pepitone was killed, struck 18 times with an axe. His wife saw a large figure fleeing the scene but couldn't identify him. The killer left his usual clues. This was the Axeman's last known murder. Despite ongoing investigations, he was never caught. Some reports suggest two men may have killed Pepitone, while others hint at a possible mafia connection through his family.